Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 1 hour, 15-minute webinar. It's a very interesting topic that I have taken today. So rather than working on one tool, Excel, PowerPoint, Power BI, or rather than looking at one problem, which is a marketing problem or an HR problem, I'm teaching you how to solve a problem which could be relevant across industries, across functional areas, right? So we'll be learning how to create a reference line. I mean, of course, first I'll tell you what is a reference line and why do you even need one? How do some of the best companies like the consulting firms and the big four use it in their report? And then I'll be teaching you how to do it. But the exciting part is we will, with the same data set, do this on Excel. We will do it on uh, Power BI. We will do it on Tableau. We will do it on generative AI, and then we will also do it on Python, on Excel, using generative AI. That means that I will not be writing Python code because see, this session is not about making you a programmer. Is learning Python not important? Of course, it is very important. And I suggest everyone should learn it. But this session is not about that. It is about teaching you that even without actually learning coding, how you can use generative AI to get the results that you want. Okay. So first things first, this is the flow. I'll be teaching you Excel, Python, GenAI, Excel, Python, GenAI on Google Colab, Power BI, and Tableau. Let us look at some examples to first understand how do companies use a reference line. So a reference line, everyone, is just a line that helps you either do a comparison, create a benchmark or a baseline. Like in this case, we have a BCG chart, and the blue line is the industry average for 1230. The red line is the industry average for 1340. So the idea is I have PSUs large, medium, private, old, and new. And I know that if I compare each one of these columns, what am I comparing against? See, one is the comparison with other column. For example, I'm comparing 1594 with 951. But I'm also looking at the average for the entire year as a whole. So this is one example. This is one more example where I'm looking at the global median. So we have 10 to 20% overstaffing in Indian banking administrative function. And this is the 10.1% global median that I'm comparing against. One more. This is by Arthur D. Little, which is a management consulting firm. Here, there are two vertical lines. It's a bar chart. These are banks. So on the left, we have the neobank, like the new banks. On the right, we have the legacy bank, HSBC, Paribas, Barclays. The yellow dashed line tells us the average cross-sell ratio. Red tells us average product offering. This is a BCG one where I'm looking at the average TD, the technical decline. Then we have another BCG where we are looking at S&P 1200. So I'm comparing companies with a weak, mixed, and a strong culture against the S&P 1200. This is 11 years of data for COVID, where I'm looking at the pre-COVID, the recovery period, and the post-COVID period. This, again, is a McKinsey chart, average of 35, average of 30. This is very interesting. We have both a horizontal and a vertical line. So the horizontal line tells us typical retail gross margin is 25%. So I can see, as the order density changes, how is my line moving? UK drop rate, London drop rate, 2.5 per hour, 3.5 per hour. That is the vertical line. This is PwC. I'm looking at, again, I'm assuming it's the average. This is also interesting. This is Deloitte. Rather than showing one line with one value, they are showing a band. So they are showing between 0.999 and 1.54. So I hope now you can relate to why these are created and how these are done. And, it is important because the best firms in the world are using it. So I don't think I have to convince you or sell you why to make it. I hope that part is something you are confident on. Now, if you look at the advantages, one is contextual benchmark, which means that provides a benchmark or target value to compare the actual data against. An example could be a sales target. Visual clarity, it helps you highlight the threshold, trend, goal. So for the user, for the consumer, the viewer, it is easier to interpret any patterns that they have in the data because they don't need to actually look at the exact value. Just by looking at the line, I know what is above and what is below. For example, decision making, it gives you a clear indication whether some action is required, whether there is a deviation which you were not expecting. Improved storytelling. It's a way of storytelling because it improves the way you're communicating to the internal customer or to the external client. And you can also have narrative, which means along with the line, there is also like a small description about what it is. Then you have data emphasis. It's a way of immediately getting the user's attention, especially when you're presenting to leaders. See, leaders have very little time. Generally, we would say in 30 seconds, they should be able to look at the most important KPI. But how do you get their attention to the most important thing? That is another example for where the reference line could be helpful. And of course, customization. You have column chart, bar chart, line chart, very common charts in all the software. But how do you make them more customizable, something different, which has a wow factor? Reference lines can help you with that. Okay, so we'll start with Excel, everyone. So I already have my data with me. Let me open this. Now, the data I have taken is very simple because we are not focusing on complete analysis. We are only focusing on creating a reference line. So if you notice, I have two columns. Let me apply a filter. First column, everyone is the market. There are 5 markets: Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America, United States, Canada. And now we have the sales value ranging from 0.9 all the way till something like 20,000. Okay, now what do I want? I want to create a column chart where one column is for every single market. Now you will say, sir, it's very easy. But there are different ways of doing it, and that is what I would like to show you. What is the easiest method to create a pivot table? So let us start with that. So I will select my data. We will go to insert. Most of you would know how to make a pivot table. So on insert, I go to pivot table. I will create the pivot table on an existing sheet, which is the pivot sheet. In fact, I have the data here. So let me use this one only. Insert pivot table, and I'll create it on the same sheet in, let's say, this cell, for example. What do I want? I want to group the data. That means I want to see the total sales for each market. So I can put the market in rows and the sales in value, right? That is a simple method. You can also write formulas, but the easiest method would be to do a pivot. But there are other methods as well, which I would like to show you. If I want to use formula, not a pivot table, what I can do is first I can write unique. Now remember, unique is a dynamic array function. That means it only works on the recent versions of Excel, not on the older version. So if I select the entire column C, all the market, it will tell me there are 5 markets I have: USA, APAC, Europe, Africa, Latin America. So let me keep the heading here, market. Now what about the sales value? For the sales, I can write equal to SUMIF, right? That means I want to find the sum of every transaction for USC. Now, one way of doing this is that I can select column C and I can say wherever USC is coming, tell me the sum from column D, simple sum if, and that will tell me USC is 23,64,000. We can check the number, 23,64,000. And then you can copy the formula down. But because we have done a dynamic array formula, I can search not just for F3, but I can write F3 hash, everyone. And if you notice, when I write F3 hash, because all these 5 cells are connected with a unique, when I write F3 hash, I don't need to write one formula and copy it. I get 5 results in one formula. So if you notice, in this one, we were getting, look at the numbers, 7, 40, 32, 21, 23, same numbers, which are coming here. And the third method is I can use this brand new function in Excel called group by. Now, interestingly, group by is also available in SQL, right? In Power Query. How does it work? In group by, I will select column C. In values, I will select column D. But here's the question. If I want to know the value for each market, what do I want to do with the sales? Do I want to find the sum, the average? So I want the function to be my sum. That means, what will it do? It will go to column C, group a unique list of market, and for each market, tell me the sum of sales. And this is such a nice way. Actually, I can't select the column here. So if you allow me, let me select group by. I will only select the data, right? Like this. And if you see, such a beautiful way, right? If you notice, it is also giving me the total. Brilliant, right? Like one single formula is allowing me, without having to make a pivot or write multiple formulas, to get me the grouping and the total as well. Don't worry, I will be sharing the solution file with you also. So after this session is over, obviously the recording will be shared with you. I'll also share the file. See everyone, this is not a session on learning Excel formula. I know you might want to ask me many questions about the Excel formula, but let's not lose focus. We are focusing on how to create a reference line, how to learn the formula that you can do later, because I'll be sharing the file with you. But still, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Any quick question, anyone? One was the pivot table, the standard way of doing it. One is with a unique and a SUMIF, which is very nice. And the third is with a group by, which remember will also give you the total at the end. But if you notice, I also have the option whether I want the heading, right? And the total or not. So if you notice, I think there should be an option for the total dev. See, I can choose no total. So it will not show me any total. So you know that level of customizability is there with the formula. All clear? Okay. Great. Now I will take this manually because see, right now we are focusing on creating the line. So let's copy the data. Okay. Let's call it sales. And I want to create a reference line. This is my market. Okay, have a look. The first thing I will do is I'm going to let the user decide what is the line that they want. That means I will let the user choose the line. So let's say the user decides to choose 30 lakhs. So I will write 30 lakhs here like this. Okay, let me change the color. Now let's make a chart. Nothing complicated, a simple column chart. I will select insert column chart like this. But in this column chart, I also want a horizontal line. So what I'll do is, in this, I will call it my ref line, and I will write equal to pi2 with a dollar sign because I'm locking the cell. So that when I copy it down, all the values are 30, and if the user changes it to 25, it will become 25. Make sense? Now, this reference line I want to add in my column chart. So I will just add it like this. But the problem is that reference line is coming as a column, which is do you see this? The column here. Let me do it one more time. If I make another chart, it is coming correctly. But the problem is that it is giving me this orange column with the same height. I don't want a column. I want a line. How do I do that? Right click and I will select change chart type. In the change chart type, I will say combo. And in combo, I will make sales into a column, which is the blue column. And the reference line will become a line. Simple. And now if you notice, we get a line like this. Obviously, if I change this number, if I make it 15 lakh, the line will come down. If I make it 35 lakh, the line will go up. Any questions so far? I think it should be very simple so far. All good? All right. But this is not complete. Remember, I also want two colors. So I want one color which is above the line and one color which is below the line. How will I do that? Please watch. So I'm going to create two columns. One column is called above and one column is called below. Now think about it. A market can either be above or it can be below. It can't be both. So I will write a simple formula saying if, okay, if the sales for Africa is greater than or equal to, right, the reference line, which is D3, then I would like to show the value. Otherwise, I would like to show 0. So what will happen? Because the sales for Africa is not greater than the reference line, it will be 0. But when I copy it down, it will show me the value only for Asia Pacific. If I make the reference line 5 lakhs, then all are shown. If I make it 15 lakh, then only 4 are shown, right? Like that. The same formula I will reverse. So I will copy this. And in the other one, I will say if it is less than the reference line, then show me the value. Otherwise, show me a 0. Basically, either it will be above or below. For example, if I make it 35 lakh, you notice only one Asia Pacific is above, 4 are below, like this. But if I make it 30 lakh, now you notice that 2 are coming above and 3 are coming below. But I don't want 0. So I'll change it to a double quote with nothing, basically a blank cell, like this. Right? What next? I will include this in my chart. So I'll go to my chart and I will include these 2 columns. So if you can see, it looks very confusing because we have to correct it. So what I'll do is right click, change chart type. If you notice, I'm only keeping my reference line as a line. All the other 3 will be a column. So above is also a column and below is also a column. Now understand, in Africa, I'm getting sales, the actual value. It is not showing me above, it is showing me below. But in Asia Pacific, it is showing me sales and above, but not below. Let's change the color. The normal sales, we actually don't need. So I will change it to a gray color. Right click, fill, I'll make it gray. The above, we will make into green. It's already green, but I'll choose a different shade of green. And the below, we'll make into a red color, like this. It is okay, but the problem is, why is it showing me gray and green or gray and red both? That means I have to overlap them. Very simple. I will double click on any column. There is an option called series overlap and I'll make it 100%. So now if you notice, let me do it one more time. Series overlap 100%. So now if you notice, it only shows me the green and the red column. If you're thinking, but sir, where has the gray column gone? It is there, but it is behind the green and the red. That is why you can't see it. And if you see, this is very cool because, let me change this to a black color, the line. See, as I change my number, 10 lakh, do you see this? Whatever is above 10 lakh will be green. Whatever is below will be red. If I make it 15 lakh, the line moves, but the colors remain the same. And if I make it 25 lakh, now you notice 4 are below it and 1 is above it, right? Like that. Let me just check once. No, 35 lakh. If I make it 25, now you notice 2 are above and 3 are below. That's it. That's your reference line, which is completely dynamic. Okay, let's look at the question. Meenakshi, I'll show you the group by. Just give me a moment. We can use scenario manager to change the value. I mean, I guess, but even though right now it is not an optimal solution or a minimization, maximization problem, this is based on data I already have with me, right? So I'm not sure where the scenario can be used here, but I mean, why not? I guess we can always use scenario in some way. Like, just to answer your question, I'm thinking maybe not completely correct. What I can do is I can say equal to count of these 5. Okay. And I want to set a number. Let's start with 0. Maybe I want to set a number, right? But just give me a moment. So maybe I want to set a number in I2 so that I want exactly 3 to be coming in above. Let's try. So data, what if analysis goal seek? And I will say I want to set the cell I2 to, no, this won't work. It has to be the scenario manager. If I go to solver and I select scenario, I will say I want to set my objective to a specific value. So I want to set the cell E9. Actually, I can do goal seek also. Let me try. So maybe I want to set my cell E9 to 3 by changing the cell reference line. Let's give it a shot. So if you notice, It is trying different combination. The only thing is, like I said, sometimes it goes in a loop. So right now what is happening is it is trying different iteration, but it is taking a lot of time to find the correct answer. And as you can see, did not really work perfectly, right? That's okay. If I try to solver, if I say I want to set E9 to 3 by changing the cell I2, and the condition is that I2 should be greater than equal to 0, because obviously the reference line cannot be less than that. Let's give it a shot. So I want to set a value of 3 by changing the variable cell I2, and it cannot be less than 0. Let's try once. Yeah, again, that did not really work. Like I said, maybe it will work, but I really have to think about it. Right now, I'm not really sure how I'll be able to do it, right? Okay. Let me also turn off the annotation so that it doesn't disturb anyone, right? One moment. Okay. And we were also looking at group by. I mean, I don't really have much to tell you. You can Google it. You can go to the Microsoft documentation. The idea is, what are my rows? My rows are the market. What are my values? My values are in column D, which is the sales value. If I include row number 2, right, and if I say enter, now the headers don't come. But if I select this option called yes and show, now you notice it shows you the header also. So there are a lot of tweaks that you can do to the formula. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't use it much, but you can go online and read about it, right? But the basic idea of group by is it allows you to group the data, which means you're summarizing the data, right? Perfect. So that's the solution, everyone. I just call it the solution, right? Perfect. Now let's go to Power BI and learn how we do it in Power BI. Okay. Let me first save it. Okay. So now we'll come to Power BI, everyone. Don't worry if you have never worked with Power BI before. It's a good starting point for you. Power BI, remember, is a free tool. In fact, everything is free. Excel, I mean, it's not free, but Excel, I'm sure all of you have. Power BI is free. Tableau is now free. Python is also free. Generative AI is also free. So I'll go to Power BI. I'll click on a blank report. The first thing I'll do is I will select my data. So I will go to Excel workbook. First, I have to load the file. So we will select our folder and I will select my raw data. That's it, nothing complicated. The same two columns that you saw before, we are selecting the solution sheet. As you can see, we have two columns, market and sales. We will load it. Okay. Now, if you see on the right side, just like a pivot table, Power BI tells you that there are two columns that you have in your table. The table is called solution and the two columns are market and sales. So I'll make a column chart, simple. And in the column chart, everyone, I will put my market in the x-axis and my sales in the y-axis. Simple, nothing complicated. Now let's talk about the reference line. See, Power BI already gives you the option for a reference line without having to create any formula. But the problem is the reference line that I have, if I go to format, you will see the second last option is called reference line. So I can add a line. For example, I can add a line which is a fixed line, which I can decide. I can have the minimum, the maximum, the average, the median, the percentile. Very helpful. For example, if I select the percentile, I can choose, maybe a percentile like 70 percentile. And if you notice, it tells you what is the 70 percentile. Let me also add the data label. So this is the 70 percentile for me coming on the right side. Very helpful. If I don't want this, I can delete it. I can add a fixed line. For example, I can add a line constant line, and I can choose the number. So I can say 3,50,000, and obviously you will get 35 lakh, you will get 35 lakhs. But the problem is, how will the end user change this number every time? See, every time they can't come to this box and change it. It is not a very good user experience. Also, the colors are not coming. So this is not what I want. I will remove it. In Power BI, we will go to modeling, right? And there is something called a parameter. Parameter means it's a user input. The user can decide what number they want. So when I go to parameter, I will create a numeric range parameter, the first one. And in this, I have to give it some input. So the name of my parameter will be choose reference line, everyone. Let's say the minimum is 10,000 and the maximum is 40 lakhs. Increment means every time you click, it will go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40. So I'll make it 10,000. Default is optional, but I'll keep the default as 5 lakhs. Also, it will ask you whether you want to keep a slicer on the page. I will select the option. Otherwise, also you can add it later, but I will select it. When I click on create, you will notice you will automatically get a slicer like this, which is not possible in Excel, by the way. And you can see I can go from 10,000 to 40 lakh like this. Without getting too much into the technical detail, please notice that on the right side, it has also created a table called choose ref line with two formulas. One formula is called generate series, which is the minimum, the maximum, and the increment. And the other is the selected value function, which means whatever you are choosing in the slicer, this one will get picked up in the choose refline value. That means if I choose 19 lakh 50, the value will be 19 lakh 50. If I choose 5 lakh, it will become 5 lakh. Now, what is my objective? Somehow I want to get this 19 lakh 50,000 inside my chart. Let's see how we do that. So I will go to format. I will go to add line one more time. I will make a constant line. Now you might say, sir, this is what you did. Havish, this is what you did before also. But this time I'm not writing the value manually. What we are doing is we are clicking on the FX button like this, which is called conditional formatting. In the conditional formatting, we will say, look, I would like to select a field value, which is my choose refline value. Now, before I press enter, think what will happen. The user doesn't know all of this. They will change the slicer. When the slicer changes, the value will change. And then when the value comes in the chart will also change. So if you notice, this is so cool. As I move the slicer, do you see how my line on the chart is also changing? Let me just change the color one moment. I will add a border and a shadow so that you can see it better. And I'll also change the line color to black. Okay. So black, and let's make it a solid line. And I'll also show the data label on the right side. Yeah, like this. So as you can see, whatever number I'm choosing in the slicer, that everyone will change here as well. Very cool, right? Okay, any questions so far? I'll also tell you how to do the color, but for that, we will need to write a formula. But before that, see, of course, this requires a lot of practice, obviously, but this is the only way you can do this on Power BI. Right? If you have any question, you can ask. All okay? All right. Remember, I will be sending the file back to you. How do you get the color? Now, see, I need two color. That means somewhere I need to write a conditional statement, which is an if statement, which means I will say if my value, which is Asia Pacific, 40 lakh, is greater than equal to the reference line, then the color should be one color. Otherwise, it should be a different color. How do I write a formula in Power BI? There is something called a DAX measure, not Excel formulas. These are different formula. So I will click on new measure, everyone. And in the new measure, I will write that this is my reference line color. And how do I write it? I will say if the value of each of the column, that means if the sum of sales is greater than equal to the ref line value, that means if 40 lakh 42,000 is greater than equal to 21 lakh 30,000, what should happen? I will keep a text like above. Otherwise, I will keep a text like below. So if you notice, we are writing two different results. One is above, other is below. But what is happening by writing the formula? How do I see the answer? If you notice, when I select my chart and I add this measure, refline color, and I put it in the tooltips here in the chart, now you notice it will tell you that Asia Pacific is above. Look, Europe is above, United States is above, Latin America is also above, but Africa is below. And if you increase this, now you notice United States is below, Latin America is below. So this is very nice, right? I can get two different results, above and below. This is also very helpful, but what I want is a color, not text. So what I will do is I will change this into a number like 1 and 0. Now, if you're thinking, but sir, why is it 1 and 0? It is not about 1 and 0. You can write 1 and 2, 10 and 20, 100 and 101, whatever you want. Basically, I need two different numbers, and I'll tell you why. Because now, in my column chart, I will go to the column color. If you notice, we have columns. What is the color right now? It is blue. I want to apply a condition. What is the condition? If the number is 1, the color will be one color. Otherwise, it will be a different color. Simple. So I will go to FX and I will say that there is a rule that if my reference line color is equal to 0, it will be one color. And if it is equal to 1, it will be a different color. So for example, in the case of 0, I will keep a gray. In the case of 1, I will keep a blue. So what will happen? Now you notice it is showing whatever value is above in blue, below in gray. But if I move this line, do you see what's happening? As I move the line, the color changes automatically. See, we had done pretty much the exact same example in the Excel also, but this is how you do it in Power BI, right? Let me know if you have any questions. Then I'll show you how to do this on Tableau, then on Generative AI, finally on Python, okay? I'll wait for 1 minute. Rajiv, what I did was I went to my column chart format. I selected the FX button, which is the conditional formatting. And in the formatting, very simply, I said, if my reference line color, which is the result of the if statement, 0 means gray color, 1 means blue color. You know, like in Excel, you write an if statement, marks less than 50 are fail, greater than equal to a pass. We are doing exactly like that. I hope that answers the question, Rajiv. Swayam, where is Power BI used? Power BI is a business intelligence tool. Like Excel has 15, 20 charts. Power BI, everyone has more than 500 charts available in it, right? So it's like Excel, but it is a very, very powerful tool. It can do many more things than Excel can, but they also have a lot of similarity. So Excel and Power BI both have formulas, function, data cleaning, Power Pivot, Power Query. But Excel is focused more on data modeling, preparing the data. Power BI is focused more on the business intelligence. That is why the name BI comes, business intelligence. It is focused more on creating a dashboard for the client. So typically in the corporate, it is not that only Excel or only Power BI will be used. Both are used simultaneously, right? Okay, let me save this. And remember, it's a free software, so you can all go and download it. So I'll call it my Power BI solution. Perfect. Let's do Tableau. Same example. I'll be working on Tableau now. Abhishek, no. So Excel formulas like left, right, mid, they're very similar to how DAX measures are. But for example, in Excel, you have VLOOKUP. You don't have VLOOKUP in Power BI. We have something called related. In so functions would be different. Like there are some functions that are common between Excel and Power BI, some functions which are only in Excel, some functions which are only in Power BI, right? So pretty much like that. Some of them are common, but a lot of them are different as well. Okay, perfect. Let's come to Tableau. Now remember, Tableau is much older than Power BI, but if you ask me from a corporate job perspective, you should focus more on learning Power BI because Power BI is used much, much more in more sectors, more companies, more functions compared to Tableau. All right. It is also free, which means now you can download Tableau public for free, and you can also save your work on the computer without any problem. So I'll connect to my Excel file like we did before. Raw data. I will select my solution sheet. Okay. So I'm just dragging the sheet, and then I will click on my sheet one. Obviously, the interface is very different, but that you can learn. I have courses on my website and on YouTube as well. So this is the interface, everyone. Remember, we are not focusing on learning Tableau. The idea is to learn reference line, and hopefully, those of you who have never done Tableau before, you will also learn, right? It's your first step towards learning Tableau. Okay, what do we do? First, I'll make a column chart. So I'll double click on the market, double click on the sales value. And in the show me, I have a few charts available. I will select my horizontal bar. But we don't want horizontal, no, we want vertical. So there is an option here called swap rows and column. That means I don't want market to be on the y-axis. I want it to be on the x-axis, like this. Same thing, nothing special, the same chart. Next, I would like to let the user use a slicer to decide the line. Now that means just like Power BI, I'll have to create a model parameter. How do we do that? If I right click, there's an option called create parameter. If you go to analysis, here also you can select. Actually, I'm not sure where it is in the ribbon. 1 second. But anyway, I mean, if you click on this blank area, or maybe if I click here, yeah. If I click on this arrow, we have create parameter. And what parameter will I create? Same thing, which I did in Power BI, everyone. I'll say choose ref line. It is a float. Float basically means it's a number, right? You can also choose an integer. And I would like to have a range of values between same thing. What is the minimum? It will be 10,000. What is the maximum? It will be 40 lakhs. Step size is the increment. That will be also 10,000. Okay. Now, when I press OK, what is happening? You will notice it has created a parameter. But where is the slicer? Like, how do I change the value? In Power BI, it made the slicer automatically on the page. But here, I will have to right click and then select show parameter. So this way, on the right side, you can see everyone, we have something called choose ref line. And if I move it, you can see I can change the number. Exactly what we did in Power BI. The next thing is I want to get this line in my chart. So I will click on my y-axis, right click, and I will select edit axis. Or I can also select add reference line. That is much better. I will add the line. And in the line, I will select the value. And here, if you notice, I can choose the ref line. That means whatever value the user is choosing in the reference line on the right side, that will come in the chart. So if you notice, do you see this line, everyone? As I move this, do you see the line is also changing? Exactly what we did on Excel and Power BI, both. Now, the only thing is the colors are not there. That means we need to write a formula. So I will again click on the drop down. I will create a calculation. In Power BI, we call it a measure, DAX measure. In Tableau, we call it a calculated field, but pretty much the same. In my calculated field, I will say this is my ref line color. Now, see, in Tableau, formulas don't start with an equal to sign. In Excel, they start with equal to. In Power BI, they start with equal to, but not in Tableau. So I will write if. Also, there is no parentheses, okay? No bracket. So I will say if the sum of my sales is greater than equal to the choose ref line value. Now here you will need to write a then. The syntax is different. Then I would like a above, else I would like a below. But because you're writing a if, you also have to end with a end. That is the syntax that you have to follow. Of course, this you will learn over time. Now what do I do? This is the formula, everyone. This file also I'll be sending back to you. So when I press OK, you notice this new calculation has been created. Now you might be thinking, but sir and Havish, I'm sorry, I just finished a lecture with a college now, so I'm used to people calling me a sir, but so you can say, Havish, this is above and below, but in Power BI, you gave it a 1 and 0 because in Tableau, you don't need to put a number. If I put my refline color and drag it into the color option, you notice it gives us different color. Do you see this? As I move my line, the color changes. How can I choose the color I want? Like a gray and a blue? Simple. I go to the color, edit. Above will be maybe, some shade of blue, something like this. And below will be a gray color like this. That's it. So exactly what we did in Excel and Power BI, everyone, we have managed to do in Tableau as well, right? Like this. Okay. Let me know if you have any question. Now I'll tell you how to do this in generative AI directly, and then how to write the code on generative AI and run the code in Excel. Okay. Okay, let's look at the question. Like in Python, does Tableau also recognize float as a decimal value and integer as a whole number? Yeah, pretty much. Right. Let me also save this. Save as, put it in the same folder. This is my Tableau solution. Okay. Here we go. Right. Okay, let's close this. Yes, I want to save the changes. But why is it asking me to save it on the cloud? Can I check once? I think this part is optional because let me just double check. Yeah, everything is working, right? Perfect. Now let's look at generative AI. So I will go to ChatGPT. You can do this on Google Gemini as well or on ChatGPT, but you need to have the paid account because you're uploading files, right? So I will go to ChatGPT. And this is very cool. You will really like it. I will upload my raw data like this, right? Now I already know what is in the data. So I can ask a question directly. I can say, watch carefully, create a column chart, okay? Sales for each market, everyone. So what it does is, it will automatically write the Python code, which right now we are not interested in. So I just said, create a column chart, sales for each market, okay? And if you notice, it will automatically write the entire code, and then the output will be, one moment. Like this. It's just that there is a market coming as well, which I don't really like. So let me do it one more time, if you allow me. What we'll do is, I will again upload the data, but we'll do it with a few more finer steps, okay? So the first thing I'll do is, I'll go to the sheet that I want. So I'll tell it, describe the data. See, this is the future of analytics where you don't need to learn or write the Python code. It will do everything for you, right? So I'm saying describe the data. And if you notice, it tells me that my file has two sheets, about us and solution, like this. Now I will say, select columns from the solution sheet, okay? Because the about us is just about me, right? That we don't need. Now the problem is that if you remember, there were two blank columns. Just to remind you, do you remember this? There were two blank columns. So it is getting confused. Should I take the column or not take the column? So now I'll have to tell it, oh, actually it has selected it properly, which is perfect. Now I will say, okay, group the data sales for each market. We can make the chart in the next step. First, let me get the sum like we did earlier. So now if you notice, it is writing the formulas automatically and it tells you the same number, 7 lakh, 87, 40 lakh, 32 lakh. And it gives you that level of control. Like if you don't want decimal, I can say, make it a whole number. It's a conversational tool. You're literally asking it a question, asking it to change something, explain something to you. So this is great, what I wanted. Now I will say, thanks, I will acknowledge it, and I will say, create a column chart. So it is using a library called matplotlib. Remember, this is not a Python class. I am planning one of those later, but that's not what we're doing right now. And it makes a column chart. Very nice. Now, if I say, okay, add a reference line at, let's say, 15 lakhs, what will happen? It will understand what is the reference line. And if you see, it will automatically add a line at 15 lakh. Again, if you see, beautiful, right? It adds the reference line. Now, the only thing left is that this reference line, everyone, of course, I can, save it and put it in my PowerPoint. If you notice, it's a ready to use output, which is terrific. But how do I ask the user for an input? So what I can do is I will say, thanks, I would like you to ask me, okay, for the ref line value and show that value on the new chart. So if you notice, now I'm instructing it. I'm not telling you the number right now. So what does it do? It tells me, hi, Havish, tell me the reference line value. So I will say, make a new chart. Now it asks me, do you see how you instructed it to ask you a question? So now it's saying, okay, please provide the value. Now I will say, I want a line at 20 lakhs. And now if you notice, after asking you, it will modify the code. And if you notice, it will do it. Beautiful, right? Now, how do I run it on Google Colab, which is the online version of running Python? I will say, this is perfect. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is to take the values, right, and hard code it into the code itself, right, so that I can copy the code and run it in Google Colab. So I'm telling it this is perfect. I wanted to take the value and hard code it. So what does it mean? Now it is not referring to my file. It already knows what is the sum of sales for each market. It is making that a part of the code itself. That means this code can now run in any other Python software. But the reference line value is still an assumed value, which is 20 lakh. So this is okay, but first let us check if it is working. So I'll copy it and I will go everyone to Google Colab. Google Colab is one of the online versions of running Python, and you can use it completely free of cost. Everything I've covered today can be used for free. So I will create a new notebook. All you need to do to use Google Colab is to sign in with your Gmail account. Remember, I do have a paid account, but you don't need that. So what I'll do is I'll just paste the code. That's it. Control V. Beautiful, right? Now, when I run it, look what happens. By the way, first time when you connect, it takes just a little bit of time because it has to connect to a server. Once it connects, then it becomes very fast. So if you notice, it will run the code and it will work. But the problem is that every time I want to change this reference line value, it's not difficult. But then, I have to come to the code and change it. I would rather want an input box where the user will be asked for a value. That means I will now go back and tell it, this is perfect. So I will acknowledge that what you have done is great, but I want you to ask the user for, okay, the reference line input. That means rather than putting the number directly in the code, do you see what's happening? Now it will use something called a input. That means an input box. And if I run the code again, this is so cool. In fact, I'll add a new one so that this also I can send to you. Look at the second one, everyone. This time when I run it, look at the bottom. It will first ask me, Havish, enter the reference line value that you want. I will say I want 25 lakhs. Enter. And then it will put me 25 lakhs on the chart. Perfect. The only thing left is I will say, fantastic. I want values above the line to be blue and below to be gray. Like even that last part that is left, I'm asking AI to do it, generative AI. It makes a slightly modified code. I'll copy it, come back, add the code. And if you see, when I run it, first it will ask me for the value. I'll say 25 lakhs, enter, and it works. Brilliant, isn't it? Let's say I run the code once again with 15 lakh. So if I go back and I run the code once again, but this time I say 15 lakh, it works. Imagine we are doing all of this and I did not even write a single line of code. I did it in front of you, is it not? I just uploaded the file. I just told it what I want, what should change, what should become better, what to modify, and it did everything. I just literally did Control C, Control V, right? Okay, any questions, anyone? Very impressive, right? This is the future of analytics, programming, the future of jobs. Imagine people 2 years back who were hired to write all this code. I don't need those people anymore. That's the reality, because I can pretty much just go and do it like this. For that matter, even if I was hired by a company to build something like this, I'm not required because they can get a subscription. Like, in fact, you can do it for free. You can write the code for free and then just run it on Google Colab. All good? Okay. And the final example I would like to cover, perfect, we are right on time, is on Python on Excel. Okay. Now, remember, Python on Excel has been released. You might not have it because you need to have the correct version of Excel with you. So if I can just show you everyone, Python on Excel, you will notice it is available to enterprise and business users only on Microsoft 365. So other versions 19, 21 will not have it, right? Also in Microsoft 365, I think it is only for business users right now on the current channel. But over time, it will become available to other users as well, like the consumers. But you need to have the latest version of Excel, which is Microsoft 365. And right now, it is only available to the Insider program, okay? But what I'm showing you, even though today you can't do it, remember, this will be important after 1 or 2 years because people in different companies will start to use it. So I'm teaching you a skill not for today, but for the future, right? But right now, if you ask me, Havish, like who uses it? Honestly, I don't think any company is using it right now, but that will change. To check which version of Excel you have, you can just go to File on any Excel file. And when you go to Account, as you can see, I have Microsoft 365 and Microsoft 365 apps. So there are 3 different licenses that I have, right? So when you go to File, Account on your Excel, it will tell you what version you're working on, right? Okay, perfect. Now, this part is a little tricky, so just work with me, all right? Now, if you notice, I have Python here. This one, insert Python. Now, what I'll do is, I will just go to a formula. I can even write equal to py for Python. Now, the first thing I want is to take the data from my cell. That means I will say Excel, right? And I will say in Excel, I'm taking C2, D5, and 292 with the headers. Headers is true. Now, when I press enter, nothing will happen because you will go to the next line. To confirm a Python code, you have to press Control Enter. So now when I do Control Enter, you will notice that it is taking a data frame. That means if I click on it, do you see it was able to take the data from my cell and store it in something called a data frame. Now, again, I can't explain all of these things because that's not what we're doing today. These gaps you will have to fill yourself, everyone, by doing a course on Python or reading online. But What I can do now is, because see, I'm assuming I don't know how to write Python code. I mean, I do, but let's say you don't know how to do it. So what can I do? I can go back to ChatGPT and I can say, I have a data frame with me. Okay. That means I already have a data frame with me. The general convention is we call a data frame as DF. You can call it whatever you want, but that's just general convention that we follow. We call it a DF. So this is the data. Now in the DF, I will say group sales for each market. Now, if you notice, what it does is I'm just asking it to write me the code because I'm assuming I don't know programming. What does it do? It says, this is the code. Assuming you already have a data frame called DF, it says, this is what you have to do. So now if I copy it, come back, and I can just come here and I can write the, one second, I'll just increase the height. I'm just adding the 2 lines, okay? Now when I press Control Enter, now what will happen? It is grouping it. But the only thing is I can't see the result. Like, sure, it is able to group it exactly what we wanted, but I mean, where is the answer? Now, if I click on this icon, I have Python object and Excel value. If I select Excel value, it will actually make the value for me, which is exactly what I wanted. But if I go back to Python object, it will revert to a data frame, right? Like this. But this is exactly what we did, isn't it, everyone? Very cool, right? Now, what is the next step? I would also like to make a chart, right? So I will say, create a, I will say continue with this. And I will say, create a chart, all right? No, I want to create a column chart. Also a reference line, okay, at 2 lakhs, like this. So now if you notice, it modifies the code. I just again copy it. Of course, it's a little longer, but that's okay. I just have to copy this. I'll come back and I'll paste it. How easy was that? I'll press Control Enter, and now you notice it will give you a chart. Check this out. Isn't that amazing? Now it has given us a chart at 2 lakh. Now, the only thing is this 2 lakh is something that we are providing manually, but that's what I told you. Ideally, this value should come from a user. So what will I do? I will go to a cell and I will write choose. Let me just increase the font size. And in the choose, I will write a number like 25 lakhs. Okay. Now, what is the cell? The cell is B2. So I'll come back to my code, right? And I'll just say that, I mean, again, I'm not changing the code. I'll ask this to do it. I'll say the value of, okay, the value of ref line should come from cell V2. Again, if you notice, there's a slight problem here. The problem is that it gives you something like this, but it is not able to understand that it actually is coming from the cell which we have on our Excel file. So, this is a slightly difficult part because this is where you have to learn a little bit of coding. It won't work otherwise. But for the moment, what I'll do is I will say, if you see, look at my reference line, everyone, 1 second. Do you see this where it says add a reference line of 2 lakh? I will say, why am I adding 2 lakh? Why don't I take reference line from my cell? And what will be the value that I'm taking? I will take Excel and I will take V2 and I will save it in something called ref underscore line is equal to Excel V2. And rather than writing 2 lakh, I will say ref underscore line. That means now when I run it, right? Can I just check this 1 second? I'm sorry, V3. What am I doing? V3, that's where the number is. So if you notice, it works. But this is so cool because you're not just completely dependent on the code. Like a lot of people might say, and I'm telling you in 1-2 years, clients will start asking me, Havish, you're telling us to use Python, but what will happen to our current Excel files and Excel model formulas and calculation? But that's the best part. It is integrated with your Excel. It is not an add-on that it replaces Excel. So now if you notice, this is so amazing. I can change the value of my Excel cell right? And it changes the Python chart. Beautiful, right? So the Python code and my Excel value are actually linked with each other, which is as good as it can get, right? Even better, this I had covered in the what if session as well. If I make a scroll bar, that means I let the user decide what number they want. Like we did the reference line, everyone. I can go to developer, right? In insert, I will make a scroll bar like this. In the scroll bar, what will I write? Right click, format control. I will say that I want the number. Now, see, there is a problem. Scroll bars cannot take a value greater than 30,000. So, what I'll have to do is I will only take 4,000. So, I will say current is 10. Okay. Minimum 10. Maximum is 4,000. Increment is 10. Page change is also 10. And the cell link is one cell below it. Why am I selecting one cell below it? Because just 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, my screen sharing stopped. So what happens is when I change the scroll bar, this number is changing, but this should actually change the V3 value. So I'll say equal to this multiplied by 1,000 is the same thing, no? If I make it 4,000, it becomes, 40 lakhs like that. So now if you notice, do you see what's happening when I change the scroll bar? Do you see how on the Python chart as well, my line is changing? Looks brilliant, right? Of course, this value is not required. So I just go and hide the value so that you don't get confused. And the user also doesn't get confused. So I just put 3 semicolon to hide the value. But this is my final product. This is beautiful. Check this out. Like this is how the user can interact. Go left, right, and go right. And we'll just finish with the color as well, right? So I just say that. Okay. Just to close the example, I will say value above ref should be green and below should be red, right? So let's copy the code again. So if you look at this part, create a list of colors based on the condition, right? This colors that is coming in, everyone. So for simplicity, I'll just copy the entire thing so that you don't get confused. And I also don't get confused. After all, I'm not an expert at Python on Excel. I've only been using it for some time. So I'll just copy it. And of course, the ref line we'll have to change again, but that will only take us a minute. So I will say take ref line, right? And we will say ref underscore line is equal to Excel V3, right? And here, rather than doing this, I will take ref line. And this reference line we will not take because we are using ref line. Here also, I'll have to change it into ref line. I think that should be okay. Let's give it a shot. Okay, there's some error. Just allow me a moment. Okay, for the moment, if I just remove this part, see, this is where, like I said, here, no, there's some problem. Hold on. I'll just go back and say, I want the reference line to come from my Excel cell, right? Let's see if it is able to do it. Okay, let's give it a shot. Let's copy and paste. We don't need this part. And. Okay, let's first see if it is working or not. Yeah, this will also not work. Yeah, like I said, we'll ignore that part about the color, but at least we'll do the previous one. With a little bit more time, we should be able to do it. But for the moment, I think this is good enough. Yeah, I think we can stick for this for now. Maybe another day, or maybe you can go back and experiment on your own. It wouldn't be too much of an effort. It's just that, because I'm working with an Excel file, so I have to consider the Excel factors. And also I have to look at, what is allowed on Python. I think that's where the difficulty happened, right? But yeah, I mean, you can ask me your questions in the meantime. How to change the data label of ref line on top right to sync with the movement of scroll bar? See, right now, remember in the code, the 2 lakh that is coming, just so that I can show you everyone. See, right now the line is changing. 1 second. I'm sorry, just a moment. Sorry about that. Ref line is equal to Excel V3. Okay. Hold on. So now if you notice, the line is changing, but the number, good observation, in the top right corner is not changing. The reason is, do you see this? This label is fixed. That means that this label is basically giving you a fixed text. It is not dynamically picking it. So what I can do is I can actually come to the label, right? And I can go back to ChatGPT and I can ask it, let's see, this is my code. I want the number to get picked from a variable called refline, like this. And if you see, it will automatically fix the code for me. And if I can use this, instead of writing this, hopefully it should work. Did you see? We managed to fix it. Again, I mean, to be honest, it's all great and all, but after a certain point, as you saw, without knowing the fundamentals of Python, you would never have been able to go to generative AI and get the answer you wanted, right? So, of course, you have to learn programming. I'll not say you don't have to learn it, but after learning programming, imagine how easy now your work has become. Like you don't really have to sit and write all the code. By no means am I telling you not to learn it. I'll be the first person to tell you, please everyone learn programming. It is very, very important, right? Okay, while you're asking your question, in the meantime, I'll also see if I can finish my example. I hate to leave it unfinished, right? Okay, just go back and say, I want values below the ref line to be blue and above to be gray. Let's give it a shot. Excel V3, blue, gray. Yeah, I think this looks good. Let's give it a shot. So copy, come back, right? And with a little bit of luck, it's working. See, like, and remember, I didn't actually modify the code. I just went to ChatGPT itself and I said, you know what? I've written my code. Everything is working perfectly with only one small problem that, I would like you to change this value. So it requires a lot of smartness, to be able to work with different tools, everyone. It's not just about knowing one tool. You also have to learn how different tools interact with each other, right? But yeah, that is where we'll close today's session. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I covered a lot of technical things, but that was the point. I'm not saying you have to learn each one with equal depth. Like I am a trainer, I'm a consultant. Of course, I have to know all these things. For you as a non-core data analyst consultant, you don't have to go so deep and you don't have to learn all the tool with the same level of depth. But some level of knowledge of Python, Excel, Power BI obviously is required for all of you. Perfect. Any questions, anyone? I'll also save the Python code that you can try later. So, sorry, how do I save it? I think it's already saved. Yeah. Yeah, it's already saved. I just have to sort of see where the file is. How do I go back to the home page? I'm sorry. Yeah, in the meantime, you can ask your question. Meenakshi, nothing. Anyone else? Any other questions that you
Hello.
have?
Uh, Avish, which AI tool is better paid version? Means like Perplexity AI is there, ChatGPT is there, which you recommend?
They're all the same. There's not much difference between them. I mean, at the end, it comes down to what is your requirement. ChatGPT, I think, is the more well-rounded tool which can do everything. Perplexity right now only has one extra feature that it gives you the sources. ChatGPT will also in a few months start giving you sources. So that difference will not be there.
In context of data analytics and all, is the Perplexity
Chat,
is okay?
ChatGPT. ChatGPT. Even though Claude is
ChatGPT.
also doing a lot better now, right? Just allow me to close the session so that then we can
Okay.
look. So again,
Okay.
thank you everyone. If you want to stay back for a few minutes and ask me a few questions, I'm more than happy. But from my side, the session is closed. All the files, all the solutions, along with the recording, I'll be sharing to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.